Welcome to OTR Debate, our off-the-record podcast where three lawyers debate all things while trying to find out how it all comes back to the law. My name's Lando. I'm a prosecutor, but I'm going to be the judge today for this very playful episode where we will be debating games, specifically strategy board games versus trading card games. And so for introducing these debaters, we have a man that cannot beat me in a board game named Splendor to save his life. We've got Maddie. And actually, you know what? We actually have Maddie's the other guy that can't beat me at Splendor. So come at me, Maddie. But we have
Hi, I'm I do legislation, and I will be defending board games.
Okay. On the other side, we have a guy that listens to trap music while laying down trap cards. We've got Mucci.
All right, yeah. I'm Mucci. I work in immigration, and I'll be talking about trading card games.
As always, the format is similar to a trial in that we have opening statements. I ask some questions of the debaters and have a recess, and then we have a closing argument by both sides. So who is ready to start with their opening statement?
I can start.
Sure.
So board games are something that most people have played in their lives at least once. They're very diverse as a genre of gaming. Typically, they are on a tabletop, kind of like you'll see here if you're watching the YouTube video. And they just cover a wide spectrum of interests and can reach a huge audience. So usually I think growing up when you're little, you think of Monopoly, Scrabble, things like that are more family friendly. That can.
This is definitely not family friendly.
I mean, if
my parents saw this, oh my.
Yeah. So they do also on the opposite side of the spectrum get very niche and into all these different specialties and painting your own figurines and things like that. And there's something for everybody. And I think that's what's so special about board games is that you can have fun with your friends and also fun with strangers that you just met, as long as you all understand the basic rules of a game. And then you can also develop these very close intimate groups that have the same ultra interest in certain games too. So I think that's why board games are a lot more accessible and fun for a larger audience.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned the little figurines. Now with 3D printers, those things are probably pretty commonplace. People are probably printing them nonstop. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting with the little robots and stuff like that.
Scythe has some good figures.
Yeah. Mucci, you got something?
Something all right. I want you to imagine that you approach your opponent from the other side of the table with a carefully curated deck of cards. And maybe you got some booster packs. Maybe you bought individual cards because you're trying to find this elusive one that you were looking for a while. But you have your deck of cards that you have made and put together. You sit down across from someone. You don't know what cards they have. They don't know what cards you have. So you get this feeling of excitement with every turn, every reveal of every card. This, oh wow, I've never seen that card before. What does that do? Let me even see what it does. Sometimes you'll find some completely new thing as you're playing. So these can be just totally unique and thrilling games that can differ wildly each time based on who you're playing, what deck they have, what cards they chose to play with that time. And that's what you'll get with trading card games. But there's an added bonus to the cards themselves. Maybe you don't even like playing the games. Maybe you have never even played the games, but you like collecting cool shit. We like collecting records or anything like that. So you can totally just dive into this world of just collecting. The chance to get a deck and pull out a super rare or secret rare out of a One Piece.
What?
A super rare. So this is a super rare One Piece card, for example.
How rare or super rare?
Keeping them protected. What's that?
How rare or super rare?
I don't have the stats in front of me, but
looks like one.
1 in a million.
I almost dropped it. Looks like 1 in 5,000 from the top there.
Oh, okay.
Got it.
I'm just completely making that up.
That's his power
The
level.
5,000. Probably his power has leveled up something or other.
Yeah.
Oh, this
that's like
guy's a lawyer, actually.
It's Trafalgar Law.
Okay. This guy's in One Piece?
Yes.
What does he practice?
It's like some kind of magic.
Medical malpractice law.
Okay, that looks about right.
And yeah, you might scour the internet for specialized stores for this elusive like shiny Pokemon card or something like that, and you keep your cards in great shape so that you can get and don't drop them. So yeah, you can get the best maybe PSA rating and sell them for money like any other collection of collectibles. So you just have both of these two interests that you can kind of facilitate, like this collection and just these fun games. So you have endless variety and games that can be as fun to collect the parts of as they are to play.
Okay. Good job, guys. We'll go to the questions. All right. So for my first question to the two of you, are your games on the rise? Give me some brief history surrounding your chosen side. Kind of tell me about your games. Let me know what's going on with them and if they're becoming popular.
Well, yeah, I'll give you a history briefly. Basically, before the 90s, it wasn't really all that much other than just cards, like Topps baseball cards from like their Bazooka bubblegum. They would have stats of players, people collecting and trading them, but they're not playing a game where you're like, a one baseball card player against another. Really, it was Magic the Gathering in 1993.
Well, the baseball players were playing a game.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
But I don't know if people set it up like a baseball field on all their cards and like
Right.
play shit. That would actually be pretty cool.
It'd probably be like a fantasy
movie
fantasy
basis.
league, I'm sure,
Yeah.
of sorts, before the internet.
But maybe that did happen. But really, it was Magic the Gathering that put together what we can now think of as the trading card game in terms of collectible cards, but also an actual fully realized game out of them. And it introduced a bunch of things that became staples, like randomized booster packs with different cards in them, expansions, cards of different types. So it's not all like just baseball players, but it's cards of different types, one like land or effects or like character kind of cards. And it was designed by Richard Garfield, mathematician and game designer, and he wanted to make a game that could basically be played in brief intervals between other games, inspired by fantasy and the multiverse.
In intervals between other...
Yeah, I guess between like...
You're waiting for someone to play like their turn, and you get bored, so you play another game.
Yeah, which, games of Scythe can run pretty long, so
Yeah.
It's gameception.
Yeah.
Him being a mathematician, I think that probably... I mean, just the probability aspect. Am I cutting into what you're going to say? I'm sure.
Oh, no, I don't know what you're talking about, actually.
I have no idea. I cannot follow you at all.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I think that him being a mathematician with those types of cards, you kind of have to have a lot of variables up in the air, right? Like, you have to kind of account for different things that'll happen. Like, there's going to be, with a bunch of different cards, especially in a deck where you could build your own, there's so many different things that could happen.
Yeah.
Depending on what kind of cards you have. So I feel like it's almost like a probability sort of thing that maybe he utilized that somehow.
Right, and making a game where one card's not going to like break it, or like,
right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like a new card comes along that has to conform with all the other cards in a way, or make it still be involved in a playable game while adding something new and adding variety to the game is probably a pretty hard line to walk, So yeah, I introduced this customizability of these decks, all these sort of innovations. From there, basically the explosion was mainly around, in the 90s, was mainly around games that were based on other properties. So you have Yu-Gi-Oh!, like a Star Wars one, and of course Pokemon. Of course, a huge multimedia sensation. Sometimes I didn't remember what came first, but it seemed like everything exploded at the same time. But I guess it was video game first, and then trading card game.
Yu-Gi-Oh was like one of my favorite. Like,
yeah,
I collected the Pokemon cards, like
Well, later.
somewhat. I never played the game, but like when I saw, because I used to love the show too. Like Yu-Gi-Oh was a fucking bomb ass show, and I would collect them. And my brother and I, we had like our decks that we like kind of build, and it was the first and only time really to be making a deck that's unique. Like he had his unique deck that was built on certain things. Like mine was built on certain things. It was kind of fun.
Oh, you guys didn't share?
I mean, he had his own. I had my own. And
Interesting.
like, I mean,
So you can play against each other.
yeah, we
Yeah.
play against each other.
My
So-
brother and I had a shared collection of Pokemon cards.
Oh,
so-
those were shared. Those were shared.
Okay.
Those
Yeah.
are probably more valuable.
We'll see.
Well, and that goes into the on the rise element because one of the things that kind of exploded was Pokemon cards during the pandemic. In part because Pokemon Go, which came out in 2016, just brought people back into the world of Pokemon, or maybe even new people into Pokemon.
I also brought them to the polls.
Well, it clearly didn't. So,
Touche.
so it was bubbling from that in 2016 to kind of in 2020 in the pandemic. People are at home. They're finding their old Pokemon cards and going like, oh, hey, these looking these up. These are actually worth some money. And we mentioned this as well, but Poke Tubers we did a lot of pack openings, and that became a huge thing, making them a ton of money. And add all that to the fact that Pokemon recently celebrated its 25th anniversary in 2021, and I believe so. All this added to this kind of craze of Pokemon cards again. But then there's more recent games. The One Piece card game came in 2022. And shout out to Dice Dojo down the street from here, which holds weekly Magic.
Mucci
and
just
other
doxed himself.
I guess I
I
did.
was thinking that.
It's not like it's next door.
Or is it?
But
It's in the same city.
I gave my assassination coordinates.
Moving on. Let's keep this going, Council.
I was interrupted. Anyway, shout out to Dice Dojo, which holds these weekly One Piece tournaments and matches, as well as other card games, Yu-Gi-Oh, I believe, and Magic the Gathering and stuff. But Nate there taught me the One Piece card game when I was just like, I don't feel like I can just play with these people that probably have incredible decks and stuff like that. So shout out to Nate there at Dice Dojo. And I just want to shout out one more. Well, the newest card game, or one of the newest trading card games, is Disney Lorcana, which came out at the end of 2023.
Cash grab.
They need any more cash. And it's just cards featuring Disney characters, objects, songs, etc. It had 5 expansions so far, and tournaments have already been held for this one. Actually,
Like
just
Kingdom Hearts or something? What is this? Like
well, no, because Kingdom Hearts is like Squaresoft, and it's
Okay.
like Final Fantasy mixed
This is
with
like
Disney.
Disney? This is like
It's just
Disney?
Disney,
like Mickey
just
Mouse
Disney.
cards?
From
what
what
are we
I've
talking
seen,
about
mostly like, Maleficent or like Belle, Gaston,
Bambi.
yeah, those, I think the Seven Dwarfs, stuff like that. Those, the
So you gotta
movie
collect them
characters.
all. The seven?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was some element where like
don't
having
need
more
Sleepy.
that means you have like some more like, I don't know, power in some way.
So wait, they fight each other? It's like a fighting game?
You are trying to. I'll get into this a little bit later.
Sleepy and
But
Doc going against each other.
I don't know if the dwarves fight each other against each other, but the game is kind of like you're trying to find all these pieces of Disney lore. That's where Lorcana comes from. But also you can fight the characters of the other person to have them back down or like win points and stuff like that.
Interesting. I've not heard of that before, but it sounds like something I could maybe get into.
Yeah. I haven't played it yet, but I just heard about it. Actually, just bought a starter deck of that too.
Yeah, you should have a deck that has Sleeping Beauty on it. Have the prince back down.
Yeah,
Tell him to
maybe
back
that
the
works.
fuck off.
Yeah.
Taking a
This is
nap. here.
2024. Back off. But that seems like it's going to be big as well. Like it seems like all these trading card games are on the rise again. I was just going to say like a tournament was held for that one in Chicago last month. So,
Why didn't we go?
I don't know about it.
Okay.
So preparing for this.
All right, what's going on with board games?
Well, it's a little hard to give a brief history because board games have just been played throughout history. I mean, in almost every culture, every society has some sort of board game. And just to go back in history a little bit, like the game of chess. Can you guys guess when chess was made?
600 AD.
Wow. I have no idea how you knew that. Yeah, you were looking at my screen. But so chess was made in 600 AD, which is like wild. That's been played for thousands of years already. You go back a little further to 2000 BC in China.
This I actually did know because this is a game that I've been wanting to like learn. And I saw it on, I didn't really know about it, but I saw it on the Devil's something or other on Netflix. It's like a game.
Where's Prada?
I was about to say that too.
I think it's the Devil's Game or the Devil's Plan, something like that. And it's like these contestants that are super smart in South Korea that they're like competing in this game of like all these like intellectual games. And one of the games that they have to, or one of the people has to go against like some of the creators or whatever is Go.
Yeah.
And it's like a very complex game. And I had never heard of it, and it looked interesting. It looked fun, but it looks hella hard if you know what you're doing. Like if you're playing someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I never really formally learned how to play, but I did read a manga like when I was a teenager called Hikaru no Go, and that's when I first learned about it too. But I think maybe some other games that more people are familiar with.
Sushi Go.
Well, that too. But before I get to the modern world, just a few more games from historical times in ancient societies. Backgammon, which I also don't know how to play. It was always on the back of like a chess or checkerboard.
They were all included. I'm sure they were all included in that like 10-in-1 little magnetic game that everybody had. And I remember thinking that, oh, these games are boring. And like... not in preparation for this, but like just in wanting to play board games, looking into like what are some of the best board games to have. Backgammon, Go, like those all came up, and the history behind them seems super interesting.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, man, I could have been playing those on the little magnetic thing. Now I got to shell out some serious cash against like this board, like that I'm gonna think is cool looking, to learn this game for the first time ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool to think. I mean, obviously, I'm sure the rules are different and the boards look a little bit different, but the like function of the games themselves are like the same in 2024 as they were in 2024 BC. So backgammon was made in ancient Persia, current day Iran, and like checkers around the same time in 3000 BC was in ancient Mesopotamia, which is current day Iraq. And like these games that we grew up as kids playing, like kids thousands of years ago were playing too, which is just kind of amazing to see. And if you Google like the golden age of board games, you're going to find articles that say like right now in the 2020s is the golden age of board games. You'll find articles that like the early 2000s, the 1980s, like the 1930s, like this just seems to always be the golden age of board games. And I think like that's just like goes to show that board games are kind of perpetually in the zeitgeist and played with families, and they stand the test of time, I think. And so I think in modern day, moving to Sushi Go and like the digital age, I would say the appeal of board games, for me at least, one of the biggest appeals is like the social aspect. It's a time I can set aside to like schedule and hang out with friends and play some games, and it's a solid few hours that we're going to be together figuring out some games. Probably take like 30 minutes to figure out the rules or watch a YouTube video on how to do it.
Well, that's only if Mucci is explaining them. So.
But then there's also the like the nostalgia aspect of it too, playing like newer versions of old games like Monopoly Deal versus Monopoly, or during the pandemic when we couldn't all see each other in person, like playing games online, like Dominion.
Right. Did they shut that down? Like, was that?
Oh, I don't know.
Is that online still? That was a huge thing. Every one of us was
I got
like,
so many people playing. I got Steve, my cousins playing it.
Yeah, so
Amanda.
many of us were obsessed with that game, and it was like, oh, like I didn't know you played. Yeah, and then meanwhile we're playing like 5 rounds. It's like this long game, like yeah, and then all of a sudden I don't know what happened. Then it kind of just died down.
Yeah.
So I feel like there has been somewhat of a resurgence of board games. I think a lot of people played Trouble or Sorry or those types of games when we were kids during recess at school or something like that in daycare. But now
You're playing this in daycare?
I don't know. I have very vague memories before I was 5. But
maybe you're just playing a bunch of Go.
That's true.
All right, going to the second question. You guys mentioned some card games, some board games that you like, that you were giving me examples of. Give me some examples of unique game mechanics within your side.
So Yu-Gi-Oh! That came up. That emerged around the era that Pokemon was coming out, and introduced chains where cards or effects can be activated before other cards or other activated cards or effects resolve, and each player can respond to continue that chain and keep the effects going.
So like card on top of card. Kind of.
Yeah. If it helps.
Sorry to interrupt.
And then Disney Lorcana that I mentioned has battles, but most of the focus is on collecting lore. So you go between questing your character to gain lore or challenging the other player where you do damage to them. And also, unlike like Magic or One Piece or some other games, when you do damage to another person's card, it keeps on until the next round. So damage stacks until that character is exhausted. Unlike going by round. And they also keep adding new mechanics with their expansions. Like one of them has resist to reduce damage when you do get attacked or whatever.
When you say the Disney game, when you say collecting lore, whatever, are you saying that part of the game is just collecting stuff? Is this Disney's way of to play this game you have to just keep buying these cards?
No, the cards themselves will be all you need to play the game. You don't need because to win the game, you're going to be the first person to get 20 lore.
Okay.
So
okay. I thought maybe it was
in
the
game itself. Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past Disney to have us start a game. Say I have my deck, you have your deck. We start the game.
It's unplayable.
10 minutes later, I got to go to the store. This card says collect 10 more cards. My card says collect another deck. And then before you know it, an hour in, you're down $300.
Well, I do think there is an aspect of cross promotion that is very effective, because I remember as a kid, seeing the first Pokemon movie. If you were first in line or whatever, you got this special edition Mew card, which I'm sure Disney would not be remiss to not go that route too. That they might have special edition stuff for movies or things like that.
Well, I mean, that's what's I think really fun about these ones that are based on something else you already like Pokemon or these Disney ones or One Piece. You're getting really cool drawings and designs of characters and stuff that you already know and like, and you're trying to find, it's not just a cool design on a card. You're this is this character that I really like or something like that, right?
Is it just one card per character, or is it multiple? Is there just one Goofy card, or is there different types of Goofy?
Goofy on all 4 of his feet as a dog, or
I think the Disney
he's got different outfits, and he's played different roles.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of these ones there are multiples of the same character but different cards.
Okay, Fisherman Goofy,
and that's also true of this one of One Piece as well. There's so many Luffys.
Do you have Luffy with
without
you?
a hat?
Yeah. But as I try to find Luffy, there's Zoro. As I try to find Luffy.
About him. This is the Monkey Man I'm looking for.
The Monkey Man. So speaking of One Piece, that has certain leader cards that'll be the person that like if they die, then the game is over for that player.
Is the one piece a compass? I'm looking at the back of this card, and it says one piece, and there's just a compass on the top.
Well, they need to
Have I discovered what the one piece
find
is?
their way to the one piece.
The One Piece was the
compasses
friendships we made along the way.
It's definitely not
It's
that.
not. It's a physical thing.
It's confirmed that's a real thing.
Friendships are tangible.
It's, people were giving us guff for that.
Yeah. So anyway, you would have a leader card. So there's also a different Luffy leader card as well. And the leader card can all the cards at the bottom have a color. The leader card will have a color, and so you can only play cards that are the same color as your leader. Some of the other leader cards will also have two colors, so you can make a deck of those two colors. But you can't like put anything in your deck that is like if you have someone that's red and yellow, you can't put like a blue card in there in the deck. So you can have and make and create different decks based on like who you want your leader to be.
Okay. So you kind of build your deck around the leader.
Yeah.
And the color that they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I was basically like going through and like, okay, I don't have 50 green cards or whatever, so I can't make this person my leader yet.
Who's your leader?
I've done Luffy before. Like the starter deck will have the ones that like you're going to be able to play with any of the 3 leaders that come in the starter pack that I bought here, but there was one I got like Bello Betty, who's one of the revolutionaries, and she has I think yellow and red, so I can play anyone who's yellow. And I had enough yellow and red to make a deck out of it. You have to make a deck of 50.
Okay.
And you can only have 4 cards that are the same.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, the exact same, not like different versions of Luffy you can have, but yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Wait.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to expand on what I mentioned in my opening, that like board games are just so diverse. So there's a variety of variables in board games where like some have very simple rules, some have very complex rules, some have very like in-depth like situations that you have to get yourself in the mind of, and others are like very straightforward with no plot or theme at all. So I think going off of that, one game I did want to bring up was like Pandemic Legacy, because another variety of games are like cooperative games. So most games I would say are competitive, where you're playing against one or a few other people.
Is this the one? Is this the game that you guys played that I was not a part of?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the game that you guys played immediately prior to the actual pandemic?
Yes, that's
It
correct.
was throughout 2019, yeah.
Is this the game that you guys centered around your little cult of playing this pandemic game that all of a sudden brought on a world pandemic?
I would say
we convene once a month to play this game.
correlation does not mean causation.
Okay.
But yeah, I think
We played it until it was no longer fun, which is when the real pandemic started.
yeah, and I still have the box sitting at home that's unfinished. But for those who aren't familiar with Pandemic Legacy,
They're all familiar with the pandemic.
well, maybe not the legacy of it.
Not yet.
But it's basically a cooperative board game where you and 3 other people are trying to eradicate the spread of disease, infectious disease around the world. And
When was this game created? I'm like, what?
yeah, I don't actually
was this
know.
Kind of new game, like what?
I don't think it was immediately.
I don't think it was brand new at that time, but it was pretty new, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's not new enough to
2010s,
have a conspiracy theory
think.
about the COVID pandemic.
I'm sure there is a conspiracy theory out there.
I'm sure there is, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories for everything. But, I think the special mechanics in this game, because there is also just a pandemic plain version where you just do one game and it's done. The special thing about this legacy game is that you make permanent changes to the game each time you play it, so that the next episode or the next time you play, it's a different set of rules, basically. And so that's like one cool aspect of this type of board game, that not only are you already, the 4 of you are working together, but you're making changes like ripping up cards or like adding zombies or, as you go through the year, it just gets harder and harder usually. And if you lose, it gets harder. If you win it, maybe it will get a little easier. You will unlock something. So that's one aspect of a like more complex game.
So it's a game that keeps going. Like it's not like a one-time sit down and you're done. It's something that kind of builds and builds.
Yeah, so this one, it's actually over the course of 12 months in the universe of the game. I think we made it through 9 months, like September. You get 2 chances every month to, beat the pandemic that round, from my memory. But I do also want to talk about a much simpler game as well. And just to highlight kind of other types of mechanics of board games. And one game that I remember fondly playing as a kid is called Mancala. I don't know if you are all familiar with it.
Yeah, sure.
I've heard of it.
The version I played was like this wooden board with holes in the, I don't remember how many, but then on the ends were 2 big holes, and one is yours, one's your opponent's. And we played it with like these glass marble things that were pretty cool, and they made fun sounds, and you collect it. But I just recently learned for the preparation for this episode that according to some historians, the oldest Mancala boards were found in Jordan, on the floor of a Neolithic dwelling as early as 5,870 BC. And this claim has been disputed by some, but, the fact that they found, some historians may have identified this from, what is that, like 7,000 years ago or so. And so in more recent times, but not all the way recent, some historians have also found some evidence of Mancala in slave communities in the Americas. And they believe that the game was brought to the Americas by enslaved Africans during the transatlantic slave trade. And it was played amongst the enslaved Africans to foster community and develop social skills. And I think that's so special that a game that was meant for that purpose is still being played today to also, foster community and develop social skills. And that game, for me, it's like very simple. You're moving rocks basically on holes, and like that's it. But it's a lot of fun, and I remember as a kid just like really being excited during recess having that to play. The mechanics of moving one rock from one hole to another hole is like very simple, and the rules are not very complex. But I think that's what makes the variety of board games so special.
All right, and at this time we're going to do a little recess game called No Caps in Court. All right, it's a true or false game. Basically, I'm going to give you guys a statement, and you're going to buzz in with your name if you think you know whether it's true or false. All right, keep in mind, if you get it right, you get a point. If you get it wrong, you get a negative point. So choose wisely. All right, starting with question number 1.
Statement
number 1. You're right. The original Game of Life featured spaces for suicide, disgrace, poverty, and prison.
Mucci, true.
Okay, you are correct.
It was too specific not to be true. I was like,
okay, well, we'll see about the rest of them, huh? All right. Question number 2. Every Magic the Gathering card is printed with the word Deckmaster on the back, but there is also a little squiggle cutting through its graphic that was done intentionally to signify rarity.
Mucci? False?
That is also correct.
Okay.
It was unintentional, and it was a little squiggle that just was like a slip of the pen that was too expensive to just fix at the end of it. So, 2 points, Mucci. He's really rolling the die here. Getting lucky here. Question number 3. We get in this game.
False statement.
1 point for we. The longest Monopoly game ever went on for 150 straight days.
We.
Okay.
True.
That is false.
I'm back to 0.
Back to 0. It actually went on for 70 straight days. Okay, I just switched up the number.
It's still so
it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
That is insane. All right, and for our last statement.
Even 70 straight hours would be bad.
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah.
70 minutes is pushing it too.
All right, we get in on this one. Illustrator Meowth, that was first released in 1998, so obviously a Pokemon card. 6 in total were made. They were given as official prizes during an art competition, making them exceptionally rare. In February 24, 2022, one sold for $900,000, then was sold again for $6 million. No one wants to guess.
Okay.
Okay.
False.
That is correct. It was. That is completely 100. It's like 99% right. It was Illustrator Pikachu.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I went with Meowth because I was like, okay, he was also like kind of famous in the show.
Yeah.
But it was in 1998 that they were released, so I'm not sure. I guess that probably falls in with the animated series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have said true, but then I guess it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
One to, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mucci, I think you won.
Lose, yeah.
You won there. You got a point. You lost a point. You got a point. This, in fact, will not matter for anything because these little recess games won't affect my decision. So, but before we get to the last question, I just want to express to the viewers, listeners, do us a quick favor. Subscribe. Like our stuff. We would enjoy it and like it and love it. So
Want some more of it.
Yeah. Thanks. Now down to our final question, our legal question, as always. I thought I'd, go out on a limb here because most of our legal questions pertain to lawsuits, dealing with money, dealing with companies that are doing something that, violates a contract or infringes on some kind of, rights or whatever. These topics, the trading card games and the board games, really lend themselves to that kind of situation where a company is like maybe taking advantage of, the people playing the games. So what I'm going to do is ask you guys, give me some criminal cases that involve your chosen genre, because none of this civil stuff. Tell me about a criminal case, either one of you, both of you, that your side has been involved with.
Sure. So normally when you think of people who play chess, it's often, like the Queen's Gambit type of intellectual person, very sophisticated sort of game. Usually these chess masters are like, of that caliber, I guess I would say. But if you go back to Ohio in the early 2000s,
Okay.
I thought you were just straight telling me to go back to Ohio. It's like
Like right
no,
now.
and
I don't
then
want to.
we're back to Ohio. Okay. Anyway, so you're in an Ohio prison and you're playing chess with your cellmate, and every time that you put him in check, he just quits the game. And you just get so
Infuriating.
frustrated.
Solid strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just get so mad that you stab him and kill him. And this actually happened. So this was a case that happened in Ohio where this guy named Newton killed his cellmate Brewer because... Newton.
He's like Sherry. He has one name.
Yeah, so he basically got so frustrated he slammed his head on the floor, stomped his throat, and cut a piece of his suit to strangle him.
My God.
Yeah, so...
Did he use any of the chess pieces?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But this case actually became controversial because a lot of people speculated he was just doing that so he could get the death penalty because he himself wanted to die. And so when it came to his time of execution...
Death by chess.
Yeah, basically. By choice and by chess. Yeah. He had some issues with his lethal injection, and it rose to the level where basically there were like advocacy groups and stuff in Ohio basically saying to get rid of lethal injection, and they had to put a pause on it to explore why these lethal injections weren't working. But basically, when it came to his time of injection, he didn't die until about 2 hours after his execution. Even after the execution team stuck him at least 10 times with the needles. So it was kind of like, from a chess game to, I don't know, pin the tail on the donkey kind of thing, but with a lethal injection.
Blindfolded?
Maybe that's why it didn't work. But, it's only up for the Ohio authorities to look into why it wasn't working. So maybe all they had to do was take the blindfolds off. But anyway, there was another criminal case involving a different game called Yahtzee, which, if you're familiar, is a bunch of dice.
Love Yahtzee.
I don't think I've personally played it before, but one person will never play it again because she decided to play Yahtzee with her 3 sons on Christmas Day in Minnesota. And boy, was she wrong. She should not have thought that would be fun because her youngest son, who was 17 years old, got angry at her request to play Yahtzee that he covered her head in a plastic bag and choked her with a belt.
So they didn't even get to play?
Yeah. And her other 2 sons, an 18-year-old and a 25-year-old, didn't come to her aid. And basically, they helped the 3 of the sons put her body in a trash can to store until the ground was soft enough. And her body was discovered 6 months later in the backyard. So the youngest son was faced with second-degree charges, and then his 2 brothers were charged with accessory after the fact.
Second degree.
That's
interesting.
I could send you the article to read about, but I didn't.
Would love to.
Yeah. So these are
interesting.
Yahtzee.
On Christmas Day.
Yeah. In Minnesota.
Man, I imagine being so angered by. They probably would have had fun.
Teenagers, hormones.
I guess.
Yeah.
Weren't the other ones older?
Yeah, but the 17-year-old was on who did it.
Yeah, but I mean, they could have talked some sense into him.
There were probably some other, the Yahtzee was just the straw that broke the camel's back, or in this case, choked their mothers to death.
Yeah.
So,
you guys ready to hear about some wire fraud?
Yeah, let's hear about some wire fraud.
This is a recent case of Anthony Curcio and Josef Bondarchuk. They were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and wire fraud. It was a fraudulent scheme to defraud buyers and marketplaces that purchased trading cards. Included Pokemon cards, also included sports cards like Michael Jordan and stuff like that. But they at false and misrepresented inflated prices. And they misrepresented low to mid-grade cards as having high-grade ratings from a reputable authentication company.
Is that what you're doing here with this guy? Is that what you're doing here with this guy in quotations, Captain?
The big toe captain. Yeah, I mean, they would say this, if I went and got this graded, and it was a 7 or something like that, they would say it was a 10 or, something like that, right?
Okay.
10 out of 10. So anyway, they sold or tried to sell a 1999 Venusaur and a 1999 Charizard. The Venusaur seems to be what caught them up, though, or what got the authorities to actually finally get the evidence against them, because in July 2023, Bondarchuk misrepresented to an undercover officer that the Venusaur was worth $10,500. He mailed the card to the undercover officer, who wired the money to his co-conspirator's bank account.
So there was an undercover cop that was buying Pokemon cards?
Yeah, it was to get him on that. Yeah, it was because I guess it was a pretty huge thing.
This is almost as bad as that one cop that you told us about in the. Actually, it was I think the undercover sting in the comic book store.
yes.
Where the officer went in and he's like, "You're selling some stuff you shouldn't be doing."
Yeah, but I mean, it seemed like be a pretty big problem. If people are, relying, and not relying on these, but they want to collect them and they want them to be authentic.
They're going to rip you off, and you go in there to try to buy a monkey card.
Yeah, a monkey card. Another quick one, though, in June 2024, a man was sentenced to jail for stealing tens of thousands of dollars worth of trading cards, including Pokemon and MTG. He was ordered to 3 years.
Taylor Green?
Yeah, he stole her trading cards. Pictures of her feet. He was ordered to 3 years of supervised release and and restitution of almost $300,000. He was seen on security camera footage breaking a glass case and stealing, and was identified by the store owner as a regular customer.
Oh, wow.
Like some guy that just came there regularly. He was just like, I'm just going to break in. Like, who's going to know? He also left his blood on the scene after cutting himself on the glass that he broke. So, pretty dumb crime.
I think I've heard a decent amount. We could go to closings now, as we're going to wrap things up. Typically, for closings, what we usually do is you guys give the judge, or we give the judge, our final thoughts on our side. For these closings, I think since the burden's always on the prosecution to prove their case, they're always entitled to a rebuttal argument to kind of rebut what the defense is saying. Defense says something, the prosecution, the state, or the prosecution in a case will counter whatever they're saying because it is their burden. So what I want you two to do is basically give me a brief rebuttal. Just pretend that the other side has given their closing. They've been advocating for their side this entire time. Give a brief rebuttal, knocking down your opponent's side. Okay?
All right.
Mucci, you're going to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, some of these board games are really fun and quick to play and set up and everything. Some of them take almost as much time to set up as they do to play and to learn about, even more time.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there right now. Because through my experience, and I know we can probably attest to this, the reason why they're taking so long is because when we're setting up, you're explaining the rules, and it typically takes at least 10 minutes longer.
That's right. The first time we learned Scythe, where it was like, I wasn't explaining the rules. We watched a 40-minute YouTube video and even how to set it up. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And then the time you flipped over the table, because
I could explain Splendor so quickly. The problem was I had to explain it 2 times in a row. And then I was interrupted the second time I was explaining it, so,
Okay. Anyway, continue.
I remember that differently, I guess. But yeah, some board games are really fun, and some of them, I think, to steal a Norm Macdonald quote, you can spell them B-O-R-E-D.
Oh. Ooh. Got a little spicy over on this side.
Yeah. The problem with card games, trading card games in particular, is that you need to have your own deck to even get in the club.
Can't get in the club.
Yeah. So, if someone brought a board game, typically that's enough fun for 4 or 5 people. But if someone brings a deck of cards, not like a regular deck of cards, but like a deck of trading cards, you can't play by yourself. In my understanding, I mean, with the regular deck of cards, at least you play solitaire.
Yeah.
But, and that's a little cost prohibitive for some. I do think, there are more options for affordable board games. Again, like Mancala is just rocks and holes. So that's arguably free if you go outside.
Right. It's very true. My bank account is absolutely at zero when it comes to buying something from Disney. For other things,
Yeah, and it's not to say that there aren't expensive board games, because of course there are. There are like a ton, and people will spend thousands of dollars on their hobbies. Yeah. But I think in general, it's a lot easier to have more fun in a group with board games than with card games, trading card games, just because everyone will need to have their own stash of cards or stack of cards. And yeah, I think that's just sure, there's merit to the like collectible aspect of it, but why collect many things within one game when you can collect a bunch of other games? Yeah, Sea World.
Okay, this isn't the Office episode.
Right.
I think I've heard enough. Okay, we've got some zingers from Mucci. We've got some solid rebuttal from Wii. Some The Office references from him.
We're just at the point of the night where we're entering delirium.
Yeah, it's been a long one. I'm pretty sure you can't even build on water. We've been lying this whole entire time. So I think I think I'm ready for my decision here. Okay, so with the trading card games, I'm a big fan of Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't. What can I say about these trading cards that you've got in these little cases?
Only the valuable ones.
This one looks fake.
They are fictional characters.
I think I'm going to give it to Wii. And the reason why is because I just like board games better. I do appreciate both of your guys' arguments. I learned a thing or two from the trading card stands. One piece that seems kind of interesting. It reminds me of a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like just looking at these
Magic
things.
going away too.
And, yeah. I mean, I don't know Magic the Gathering.
They're probably all somewhat similar.
Yeah, I think the mechanics of trading card games, at least if they get kind of complex, they end up kind of being somewhat similar in that you're building your deck and you're playing against an opponent. The thing I like about the board games is that a board game could be also complex, also be intricate with multiple people that you're kind of playing in a group setting, and it can last a certain amount of time, like the amount of time. The pandemic one that I wasn't even invited to seemed like a lot of fun.
We were invited to the pandemic. We all experienced it.
So I think it's just like a way to have fun with a little bit more people than just like one-on-one competitive. Like, I'm gonna lay this card down on you so hard. Like it just.
Is that a direct quote from Yu-Gi-Oh?
It just seems like a little bit more fun in a group setting. So, I'm gonna have to give it to Wii. And
thank you.
I mean, that's why we have board game nights, Mucci.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We could also have a card game night if you want, but
we gotta play Magic with. We'll play with Maddie when he comes back from hell.
Yeah, he did go to
hell. We'll
drag
him back from hell.
Yeah, he did go to hell in one of our previous episodes. So this has been OTR Debate. We've won the episode, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.